Okay, so what I'd now like to do is start talking about some of the structure of the muscle. We're going to be, again, this is muscle tissue, so we're going to be looking at it at both the tissue level and the cellular level. But before I talk about that, I want to start with something that you are familiar with, which is the actual muscle itself. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at an arm, okay, and this is a model of the muscles. And so let's start with what you're familiar with, which is the actual muscle itself. So this up here, we commonly call it our guns, or maybe our biceps is the actual word, okay, but this muscle that's going to be right here is the same as this muscle running right across here, okay. So one entire muscle is this. Okay. Now what you need to know is you need to know that this muscle is made of individual cells, and the cells are going to run the entire length of the muscle. They're incredibly long. So one cell is going to run from here all the way down to here. Okay, now just like we saw with nerves where they're bundled up and wrapped up in connective tissue, we're going to see a very similar organization and similar words actually for muscles. So keep in mind the muscle is this large thing that we can touch that we commonly think of as muscle, but they're made up of cells that are bundled together that go this entire length. Okay, so this image here is showing this entire muscle, so from one end to the other, and we're going to be looking at the individual levels. Okay, so first we're going to be looking at what's called the myofiber. The myofiber is the muscle cell. They are the same thing, okay? And each muscle cell, each myofiber is going to be wrapped up in an individual wrapping of connective tissue. And that individual wrapping is called the endomysium. Now here we have a bundle of muscle cells, a bundle of myofibers, and they have an additional wrapping of connective tissue called the paramecium, and that wraps up a bundle of muscle cells. To get to the level of the muscle, which is the largest level, we take several of these fascicles. Okay. We bundle them together and we wrap them in another layer of connective tissue, and that final layer of connective tissue is called the epimysium. Okay. So one thing on your vocabulary words that I want to make sure you get is that a myofiber is the same thing as the muscle cell. Okay. So if we're coming here to your notes packets, down to here, okay, a myofiber is going to be the same thing we just said as the muscle cell. Okay, endomysium is going to be connective tissue surrounding one muscle cell. Okay, a fascicle is going to be a bundle of muscle cells. And the paramecium is the connective tissue surrounding one fascicle. And finally, to get to the muscle level, we have a bundle of fascicles. And the epimysium is the connective tissue surrounding the entire muscle. So, what I'd like to do now is to take this myofiber, this muscle cell, and let's now look closer at the cellular structures here. Okay. So a couple of words, vocabulary words to think about. Okay. Sarcolemma is going to be the same thing as the plasma membrane of a muscle cell. Sarcoplasm is going to be the cytoplasm of a muscle cell. Each muscle cell will have nuclei as normal. The new thing that we have is we have what's called a myofibril. And this is a group of myofilaments. Well, what's a myofilament? A myofilament is going to be a protein that can help that muscle cell contract and then relax. Okay, so again, let's come over here and make sure that we have some of these names properly. So sarcolemma, that's the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. Sarcoplasm, it's the same thing as the cytoplasm of a muscle cell. A myofilament is a protein that helps the muscle cell contract and relax. So shorten and lengthen. And then a myofibril is a bundle of myofilaments. Okay, so hopefully you can see there's a lot of words with myo in it. Myofiber, myofibril, myofilament. And so make sure you have these definitions exactly. And in fact, here's a place for you to see if you can write in your own words what's the difference between a muscle, a myofiber, and a myofibril. And I might even add in there, in addition, myofibril and a myofilament. Okay, so I would add that in there as well. Let's continue looking at the muscle cell structure more closely. And let's go to this image right here. So to remind you what we're looking at, okay, we've got the sarcolemma, which is the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. And right here, this circular structure is going to be a myofibril. So this is a bundle of proteins that can contract and relax the cell. In red, what you have here, or not in red, in blue, what you have here is the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle cell. And that is going to be called the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so it's like endoplasmic reticulum, just sarco means we're talking about a muscle cell. So you can see sarcolemma, that's the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. Sarcoplasm, that's the cytoplasm of the muscle cell. So sarco means we're talking about a muscle cell. Now, what you may notice right here is that the plasma membrane, or the sarcolemma, dips down, and you're going to have this kind of tube running and wrapping around the myofibril. And it's basically an extension that goes internal of the plasma membrane, and that's called transverse tubules, or T-tubules. Now, the part of the sarcoplasmic reticulum that runs up next to a T-tubule, so here's our T-tubule in yellow, here's sarcoplasmic reticulum in blue, the part that is right next to the T-tubule is called the terminal cisterna. So it's a part of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, but it also happens to be next to the T-tubule. And we have a thing called the triad, which means we have terminal cisterna, T-tubule, and the terminal cisterna on the other side. So 1, 2, 3 gives us the triad. Okay. Now, the reason why we're learning these structures is because they're actually going to be important for, you guessed it, function of this muscle cell. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back here to our notes packet. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum is just the endoplasmic reticulum of a muscle cell. T-tubule is an extension of the plasma membrane of a muscle cell that goes internal, or goes, dips, maybe is a better word, dips into the cell and wraps around myofibrils. Okay. Terminal cisterna is a part of the sarcoplasmic reticulum that is adjacent or next to the T-tubules. And finally, a triad consists of a T-tubule plus the terminal cisterna on either side. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I do have a plastic model, and I'm going to point out some of these same features on that plastic model in case seeing something in 3 dimensions is also helpful for you. Okay, so this is a plastic model of a muscle cell, and so right here in pink, okay, right across here in pink, you actually see the sarcolemma. Okay, so this is the sarcolemma of the muscle cell, and in fact, if we're looking at this way, this all across in here is the boundary of that muscle cell. So each of these circular structures, so here's a circular structure right here, here's one over here, each of these is a myofibril. And if we look up close, hopefully you can see individual dots, and those individual dots is one myofilament, so one long protein capable of contraction. Okay, now the colors here are reversed from what was in the PowerPoint. But if we look here in the tan web, that's going to be endoplasmic reticulum, okay, and you can see that it's surrounding these myofibrils. This part that's close up next to this blue structure is the terminal cisterna, because this blue structure is a T-tubule. On the other side we have another blue structure, or we have another tan structure, which is the other terminal cisterna going into more of the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and I'm hoping that maybe you can see how these T-tubules form. Here is going to be our sarcoplasmic reticulum, and right here hopefully you can see how that sarcoplasmic reticulum dips in and then creates these T-tubules right there. Okay, so those T-tubules really are just an internal extension of that sarcoplasmic reticulum.